1. A big warm welcome to all our viewers. Before we begin, I would just like to run through with you the order of the event today. My name is Jay Charara, founder of the JCFT Jewish Community Foundation Trust. This event will be recorded and a public record made available for those who are not with us here. Dear audience, we are tremendously privileged today to have with us an important guest, Nadine Ashcroft, who will share with us her lived experience on addictions and how this affects significant others. And this will be followed by a Q&A with the JCFT CEO, Nicki Davis. So I will introduce our guest, which we have done, and we will give a talk, who will give a talk to us, and we will then move on to a Q&A with Nadine. But before we start, here are just a few words about Nadine. Nadine not only has extensive experience of addictions and gambling, but is currently involved in helping others through the not-for-profit organization Gamfam, where she is able to share with others her wealth of experience and wisdom. I'm sure Nadine, in the course of today, will tell us more about her organization. So Nadine, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jay. So hello, yes, my name is Nadine Ashworth. I'm the operations manager for a charity called Gamfam, which was set up through some parents that got together when their child went through gambling addiction, and they felt that they couldn't access practical support to help them navigate the kind of gambling harms that come with that. Before I worked for Gamfam, I've worked for other gambling recovery charities, and also worked for the NHS Northern Gambling Clinic as well as a peer mentor there. I myself is somebody that went through gambling addiction, so I was addicted for around 4 years due to lots of different circumstances, such as bullying at work and my mum dying quite suddenly, so that really accelerated the kind of addiction that I went through. I did end up at a point of with suicidal thoughts, and it was kind of that turning point of where I decided to access support. I've been in recovery for almost 7 years now, and as I've said before, I've worked in the recovery area for around 3 years now, helping people on a one-to-one and in a group basis. And Gamfam set up to, primarily it was set up to help affected others, so parents, loved ones, partners of people that are gambling. But through demand that goes along with that, we also now have groups that are set up for people that are in recovery from gambling themselves. The charity's been going for around 2 years. We have about 7 groups for affected others and 2 groups for gamblers. And we're just looking to develop our work and meet the needs of people that access our services. So that we do that through peer support, through one-to-one support with people, and through group support with groups of people supporting each other, and through guidance through our GRASP group as well, which is an in-house development. And we also provide employment opportunities for people with lived experience to help them train up and become facilitators for our courses as we move along. So yeah, thanks for having me here today.
Brilliant, thanks Nadine. So just starting at the very beginning really, obviously we're here today to talk about gambling. So when does having the occasional weekly flutter on the lottery that becomes a regular Friday bet, shall we say, start becoming a gambling addiction?
Okay, so there is something called the gambling continuum, and I'm sure that we could all pick little bits and pieces out of this. So if you think of somebody that doesn't gamble at all, and that has no impact on them at all, they've got no interest and no activities to do with that, And then you may have people that go out and socialise. So that could be going to the bingo, going to the horses, you know, like a girls' night out, going to the bingo with each other, doing an accumulator with people at work and going to the betting shop. All of these things are just friendly social activities that are easy to pick up and put down. People may go out with their friends and say, I've got £20 for this activity, that's all I'm going to spend. So people are conscious, they are making choices, they are behaving rationally. And then what you can find is that people become curious and maybe start trying different activities. So they may have started, I'm thinking of a lady that I used to speak to who used to go and do an accumulator on a Friday with the guys from work and go to the bookies. She didn't like going in the bookies because, in her words, it smelt of wee. Simple as that. And she started having a look online and started doing an accumulator online. And if anybody does gamble online, they may notice that there are lots of tabs or opportunities to gamble in different areas. So that could be casino games, it could be online slots, in-play betting, lots of different opportunities, and people often start trying these different things. A little bit if you compare it to drugs and cannabis and that social kind of thing of being with your friends and people smoking weed. Sorry, I don't do drugs, so I don't have the terminology for it. But then they might start experimenting with other things, and that's where addictive behaviour can come along. So you've kind of got that social side of it, that experimentation, and maybe spending more time or more opportunities. And then generally something may happen. So it could become a coping mechanism for something. So in my experience, that was my mum dying suddenly. And that became my coping mechanism of increasing that gambling, that it helped me to forget. It started to fill a lot of my time, though I still managed to hold down a job, pay my rent. It was those kind of things where it just starts to consume you, and that can become very quickly for some people as well, where it becomes a coping mechanism quite quickly.
Yeah. And then if somebody starts obviously gambling more and more, at what point do people start thinking, hang on, I think I've got a bit of a problem going on? Is it when they start spending more than they can afford, or when it starts becoming, I used to spend £20, but now I'm spending £40 every week? Because you say obviously it creeps up quite slowly. When's kind of that time when you think, hang on, this is...
And that's really interesting, Nicki, because the feedback that I kind of get from research that goes on or campaigns that go on is that people often don't feel that they have an issue until it is at that crisis point, because the kind of recovery area is always trying to look at getting people earlier before it becomes that crisis point. So some people may ring up and saying, our family are being evicted tomorrow and nobody knows about this because of my gambling. But some people may think, and it might be a shocker to them, where they think, I've spent all my rent, where on earth am I going to get all this money from to pay my rent? And it kind of pulls them back to reality, or it kind of shocks them. But for many people, gambling is presented very positively. So that, and it's always that you nearly won, you know, you could win next time, or you've won before, you could do it again. And it becomes that mentality of, I can make this all right. If I can just pull some money together and take another risk, I might be able to pull this back. And that's generally when people are then taking out loans, committing crimes that they never had a criminal background in their life, and you know, and maybe doing that, maybe borrowing and lying from people for the reasons why they need that money. So it creates lots of negative behaviours where those people don't feel very good about themselves either. And that generates that kind of isolation and secrecy and keeping people gambling when it's a problem for them, because the shame means that people don't ask for help. It's also presented quite positively and as a fun leisure pursuit. So then when people find themselves in a bit of a pickle, they find it really hard to say, actually, I can't control myself, you know, and what's wrong with me? So that adds to the silence as well.
Yeah. It's quite important, I think, and I noticed you also have this on the website, to remember that gambling, it's also the addiction, it's a mental health problem as well.
Yeah.
And I think people don't necessarily bring the two together with the addiction.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, that from the conversations that I have with people, when they get the courage to say to somebody, I've got an addiction with, you know, I've got a problem with this, the kind of thought process for the other person is, well, why don't you just stop? Just stop what you're doing and don't do that. Whereas as you go through gambling addiction, you're going through habits. So you're creating habitual behavior. You're also creating behavior change. So some of the products are set up, some of the gambling products online are set up to keep you gambling for as long as possible, to encourage you to gamble. And I know that people have choice, but generally people that are disordered gamblers or have a gambling addiction have lost that kind of control of that, and that they're just zombified. They're in the zone. They're using it for whatever soothing mechanism, or to escape, or maybe it is a, you know, this will help me create some money. But all these kind of thought processes keep people gambling, and it's really quite dangerous.
So just thinking about a general, like with addiction, like obviously you mentioned like before about drugs and stuff, obviously people are looking for that high. With gambling addiction, is it people addicted to the win or the chance of winning, or addicted to the fact that there could be the money at the end? Or is it a bit of a mixture?
That's a really interesting question. And there's a really good little short video clip on YouTube, and I think it's called something like the mind of a gambling addict, or you're not of a gambler. It's a BBC thing. And the outcome of that, just to spoil it for everybody, is actually it's the anticipation. So it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's that waiting to know. And I describe it as a hamster wheel, where you're being pulled forwards all of the time, because you're anticipating something. So somebody may get into gambling thinking this could be easy money. And I think that's what generally everybody thinks, and it's not actually that. It's, you know, it's a bit of fun. It could be a bit of me time for somebody. It could be something where people think they've got a skill in, say, like poker, or, you know, something that they can control, and that they're demonstrating they have a skill, and that they can gain money through it. But generally, I would say 99% of the conversations I have with people at the disordered gambler stages, it's just pressing that button. It's just compulsive behavior. And it's not that thing of getting a high. It's actually you're quite numb at that stage. And that whether you win or lose, it doesn't matter if you win, because in the morning it's not going to be there. That the money won't be there. It'll be spent and back in the bookies.
Exactly. And so do you find then that once people do win, their priority then isn't thinking, oh, I need to pay off this debt. It's, well, I've just won now, so if I'm going to put that back in to try and win some more, in the hope that I'm going to get more money.
I think it sometimes goes beyond that as well, Nicki, where I've said, you know, people become numb, and it's just, I don't think it's greed. You know how you might go, oh, well, I've done it once, I can do it again. It's just that it becomes habitual. So especially with something like online gambling, where it's online slots or something like that, just as an example, people would just continue to press that button, and they may increase their stakes because they've got more to play with. But more often than not, they will wake up with nothing in the morning, kind of thing, because they've just put it back into the machine. And it's just what that money represents is the opportunity to carry on gambling, to stay in that zone. But a lot of people, through consultations and through chats and things, have won early. So they may have had, it might be a small win, but it was a win that made a difference to them. And what happens is that becomes a thought process of going, I can still do that, I can still go back to that. So it's kind of people on that hamster wheel chasing that kind of potential hope.
And obviously we've had recently with all COVID, we've had a lot of lockdowns. So have you seen more people coming forward as a result of being at home more and access to being online, more people coming forward
At Gamfam, we've definitely had an increase, but I think that's because we have good referral routes from particular areas. We don't advertise generally because we have to watch capacity. So what we want to do is create a service that's good quality. But and as we grow, we want to be able to match that with quality facilitators as well. So, but I would definitely say through COVID, which is just a real demonstration of the risks or the life events that people go through. So the pressures of the job insecurity or losing their job, having to be locked in their homes and lack of freedom, the stresses of bringing up children whilst trying to hold down a job. Maybe relationship problems where it's really being forced into focus, people being ill, people dying, all of these things kind of bring up huge emotions for us. It can bring up things of identity and loss, of just having to readdress where they're up to, and that can cause a real uneasiness or traumatic behaviours for people. So definitely, since COVID has come in, my expectation is that there will be an increase in people looking for support. I think GamCare or the Gamble Aware recently did a campaign about women and gambling, and they were saying up to 1 million women now are impacted by gambling harms. I think it's actually more in their report, but that's what they're going with. And if you also think this isn't just about one gambler, it's about that gambler and the people that are around them. So research normally has this figure of 6 to 10 other people impacted by one gambler. So we're talking a huge number of people that are impacted, as well as communities, employers. There is a massive impact. In fact, there was something that I was watching a few days ago where the estimated costs of gambling per year is up to 1.27 billion annually on society and the government, through housing, mental health, prisons, just all of those different things that we just take for granted. It's all having an impact on people.
So what can people do if they suspect for example, their partner or a friend or a relative is starting to gamble more, or bills aren't getting paid and they're realizing, looking at the online statements, that money's going to pay? What's the best way to approach it? Because obviously, if somebody has some form of addiction, they might not necessarily want to address it straight away. And obviously then you've got the impact of a person speaking to a partner who the situation might backfire on them, and obviously there's domestic violence involved. So what's the best way to kind of approach it?
I think it may be different for different relationships. So if you think of a parent with a young child or even an adult child, there's different ways of approaching that, if it's your partner or a friend. And I still think it's that kind of thing of demonstrating that you care and that you've noticed something different. But there's also those practical realities of your joint bank account may be getting drained. That there's ways and means of trying to protect yourself. But I think initially it's that stage of approaching. I don't think addressing is the word, because it's still down to the person who's gambling. If there is a problem, there needs to be that realization that there is an issue. And you're completely right that domestic abuse is a really big kind of indicator. Well, it's evident for an affected other from the conversations that I've had, and I did a small report a couple of years ago where there were women coming forward and they were drastically impacted as an affected other by their partner gambling and domestic abuse, or financial coercion of getting a loan out in their name, whether they know about it or not. So some people are waking up one day and realizing that their partner's taken out lots of loans in their names, or it could be that their partner or their loved one is badgering them for money, and to the point of that they have no choice in the matter just to make it go away. That things are being sold from the house, bills are not being paid. So it's just getting some support for yourself. If you're somebody who is supporting somebody else who's experiencing problematic gambling, it's to make sure that you're okay and that you go and educate yourself. So a bit like what we do at Gamfam, where we have the 5-step, and I know that we'll cover this a little bit later on, but it's about educating yourself, because more often than not, as an affected other, you may not gamble at all, you may not know any of the lingo, or you may be very familiar with the adverts on TV and radio, but that's as far as it goes for you. So that to educate yourself and go and find out more about it is definitely something to do. And then reach out for support. So there is Gamfam, GamCare do some support as well, Gordon Moody do support. So, there is a choice for people as well. But I'm always happy to speak to anybody if they've got queries.
I think it's important for people, if they don't know what to do, to reach out, isn't it? Because you've also got to look after yourself as well as trying to be there for a partner or a family member.
Definitely.
It's important that you can look after yourself and maybe not feel ashamed if you feel like it's too much and that you can't do anything to help, especially when there's children involved, etc.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really good to have some form of support. So whether you're a gambler or you're an affected other, we always say, we try to establish, have you got somebody that you can speak to? And even if you omit the gambling, because there's still that shame and stigma, and if people feel that I just can't say it, just say that this person is behaving badly and it's impacting on you. But it's really essential to try and get somebody that you can just speak to, so that you don't feel that you're on your own. And I think that's why our groups are quite popular, because people feedback that they realise that they're not on their own and that they can just say how they're feeling without fear of judgment, and that it's confidential and it's safe as well.
Yeah. But also, we're going to come on to the 12 steps, so to speak, the 12 things that people can do. And one of the things, obviously, that you've got on the site as well is about putting different blockers on to stop people trying to get onto sites. Does that benefit people? Is that hard? If, for example, I was to put that on and my partner found out, is that going to cause more problems? Trying to see both sides of it, really.
Yeah, and what I would say with that, Nicki, is what we say throughout the kind of advice and guidance is, obviously you need to do this with the person's consent, because that you are heightening that risk of, you're doing something, and at crisis point, it's going to be your fault, and who knows what's going to happen. So we do clearly state that the things that we advise, a lot of them need the consent of the other person. But what I would say is things like the Scam Stop, which will bar you from all of the UK registered gambling sites online. There's nothing to stop you as an affected other signing up for that yourself, because quite a lot of the time when people are a disordered gambler or high in the addiction of it, is that they will try anything out of desperation. And it is not unthinkable for them to take your details and set up accounts in your name. So if you've got your details on GamStop, that will just slow somebody down. And generally these blockers are not 100% perfect, but they're using them in different ways. So there's GamBan and GamStop, and there are other ones available as well. It will slow that process down, because a lot of this is compulsive behaviour where people are just reaching for the button and setting up accounts and just knee-jerk reactions to stuff, whereas this will just slow people down and just give a bit of breathing space before they set up another account, because they can't do.
Yeah. What other things can people try and do, obviously with the consent of the person that's got the addiction? What other things can people try and do?
So there are the blockers. There are some people, depending on how old the gambler is, because there are gamblers that are under 18, can get in touch with the banks of the gamblers, and the gambler themselves can say, I want to put a gambling block on there, or can you block the merchant codes? So every transaction has a merchant code attached to it, and you can do that. A lot more banks now are more open to being aware of gambling addiction, and they're the ones who can see the transactions on the statement, as it happens. But there are different mechanisms that you can switch things on and off on your accounts, and just, like a bit like freezing your card.
Yeah.
None of this is perfect, like I said, but it's an effort to slow people down. We also, it's not a recommendation, but it's an option for people to set up a credit checker. So the credit check account, but having access to that person's credit account, so that you can see if they're going for payday loans, which ruins credit, you know, anything like that where it puts people at risk, they can also do that. But it's also about just being aware for themselves as well of what they can do to protect themselves so that they can pay bills as an affected other, or they can pay the mortgage, or that they've got a stand, because people are waking up and finding out that they've suddenly got £60,000 worth of debt in their name that they've not applied for. That's a fraudulent activity, and then that affected other needs to decide whether to take that forwards.
Yeah, imagine some people probably don't know about it till it's too late, and there's the bailiffs at the door and children are involved.
Definitely, and that happens all too often. And what you generally find, you know, when you read an article in the newspaper about somebody and however they want to be described, it's generally not very favourably. You generally see in the article that it says, up until gambling, this person had a clean history, was an outstanding member of the community, and gambling has turned their heads and just taken them down quite a dark road, really, with behaviours that they never thought they'd do. So don't rule anything out, and just make sure that you're protected and that you've got somebody to offer that support.
Yeah, so I suppose if you find all this information out, it's too late, the quickest thing to do is to pick up the phone and ask for help, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Or it's too late. So obviously, we've said about the banks obviously now becoming more aware of people gambling. What's changing then in the gambling industry? Because obviously we're saying like there's more advertising with Gamble Aware, etc. So what changes are being put in place?
So at the moment, so where are we? We're in April. So hopefully we're being told by the government that the white paper, so from the gambling review that's been happening over the last few months, that they're reviewing the gambling rules that were set up in 2005. I think they were implemented in 2007. So from that time, you know, from the kind of guidelines and guidance on that, which was just before the kind of online explosion of gambling on there. So it doesn't really fit with the digital age, they call it. So that they are looking into that, which is supposedly imminent. When we're talking weeks now that this will come out, it's been delayed quite a few months because of changes in government. So the DCMS, who are leading on this, have done a consultation with the industry, with the health agencies, and also Gamfam were part of pulling together quite a lot of people with lived experience. And there was a report with over 80 different experiences in there, responding to the questions that were put in there. As for what the industry are doing, they will say that they are doing their best to, you know, make it safe for people. The BGC, the Betting and Gaming Council, are they are a lobby group that represent all of the gambling agencies most of them in the UK. They will say that one addicted player is too many, but we're not seeing enough traction in acknowledgement of the harms that they create. The kind of, you know, the criminal behaviours and activities that go on for people can be encouraged, you know, by VIP schemes and managers that encourage gambling. You know, there's data sharing that goes on that could be used to protect people, and at the moment we feel that it's more like it exploits people. So there's still a long way to go for the gambling industry to prove that it's a responsible industry, when generally that they put that responsibility onto the gambler.
Because it's so easy, because I mean, you look, I mean, even the other day, you know, and on my emails, and there was a thing that said, oh, Nicki, we're going to give you £30 free spins. And I must say, it looked very, very, I had a look just because I knew what we were doing, just to see how easy it is. And I was actually just quite shocked that you can just literally go on and there'll be money sitting there. And if you want to do, you can just start playing. Now, luckily, I didn't play, but that temptation was there, like, oh, I've got £30. So could I turn that into £60? And especially with everything at the moment, I was thinking, well, that's £60 towards my gas bill. I'm thinking, actually, with everything that's going on, how easy it is, and how easy it is people are drawn into this. Because it's everywhere.
Definitely. And it is that kind of, you know, we see these adverts, you know, outside bookies, online, on the radio, you know, put £10 down, get £30 free. All these free bets, which aren't actually free because there's wages, you know, requirements involved where you know, you must play this game 30 times before you can take it back out. And generally people have lost whatever money they've accumulated, and generally people have quite a big win. You know, and I'm not talking tens of thousands or anything, but, you know, something that would make a difference to somebody. And because a lot of the online stuff, well, most people have got access to a mobile phone if that's what they want to do. It's quite easy to set up an account. You know, those online checks of affordability, can this person afford it, are very slow in coming, and generally after the event of trying to withdraw your winnings. But yeah, it's a real temptation for people, and it's that kind of, it's free, it's having a good time, you know, there's no risks involved, whereas people take their lives over gambling addiction, and that's the reality of it, and you don't really see that as a warning on the advertising.
No. And I suppose we obviously talk about gambling online, and we've also got the gambling in the shops where you've got the, you know, the scratch cards. We've spoken about this before, how easy it is, and why, with all this that's going on with the government now, shops not taking more of a stand on how much they actually sell, how many scratch cards they can sell to somebody at one time.
Yeah, and I have challenged the National Lottery about this, about, you know, their training with retailers, because I'm sure as part of the license of having National Lottery stands, it's very different to how it was, say, 15 years ago, where one shop in a particular area had a license, whereas now everyone's got a license to do the National Lottery or the Health Lottery. But like an example, and it's somebody that I was always talking to on Friday too, who's now in recovery and doing really well. But at the time, she was able to go into her local shop and spend £900 a go on just on scratch cards. And she would walk in and just say, can I have so many packs? And they would hand packs over. And during the recovery period, I've said, did they ever ask you if you're okay? She was like, no, they were just quite happy to take my money. And when I challenged National Lottery about this, about what training do you give to the retailers, you get a very corporate response of just, you know, we want many people to play with a little. They do the pinks. They have a pink slip, which is meant to be if they consider that somebody's behaving erratically or in a dangerous way in regards to gambling, that they can print off a slip with the National Gambling Helpline number on there. They wouldn't answer when I asked how many of those have been printed off, you know, over a year period. So that, you know, they have no control over that. And one of the biggest things for this lady in recovery is when I told her that the shopkeeper was probably making more money than her off the scratch cards, because they get a percentage of those sold and a percentage of the winnings. And that really kind of shocked her and made her quite angry about what was going on. So it was an element of helping her in a recovery. But yeah, there is a document somewhere online that tells you the kind of odds and of winning on a scratch card in a particular way, and it may say £10,000 on there as a prize, but there may be one of two of those. Once those prizes have gone, they're not as attractive. There'll be thousands and thousands of cards with £1 on them, but the retailers are eligible to carry on selling those cards until that reel has run out. So even if, you know, if it was just pounds, they're still considered as prizes. And it's a bit like when you hear the adverts of there's a winner every 20 seconds. That could be 20p. You know, and it's very misleading. And when you've got national celebrities promoting, you know, certain products and encouraging that, it's really demonstrating this normalization of gambling, and that it's all right and everybody's doing it. So what's the problem?
That's the thing, you can't get away from it. You see it in the supermarkets. Even the other day, driving past the petrol station, I noticed they had a new neon light outside that was play the lottery here. And then, like, even the other day, came home, and so I'm not even in a shop, I'm not even online, and there's a certain lottery that gets put through. I won't mention any names on here, depending on where you live, that you've got that choice to sign up to. And I opened the envelope and thought, even here, they're trying to tempt me. But actually, when I had a look at it, because it says how much you can win depending on your postcode, but then you look at how many people are in your area, and you think, well, if it's £1,000 for that area and I've paid out all this much money, if we won, I might be lucky if I get £10. So it's always what you can win, but not the reality of actually what you would want with.
Yeah, and but the thing is, it's a risk, isn't it? So it's taking a gamble on something. So, and what generally these lotteries will say is that it's for a good cause.
Yeah,
And that,
but how much of it actually goes to these good causes? How much of the money, I'd love to know this, how much of the money from all these gambling sites and the lottery go back into helping people that have developed gambling addictions?
Not enough, Nikki. So
Yeah.
you may be aware that there's a voluntary levy. So for the gambling industries in the UK, there's a voluntary levy that they don't have to pay. So there is actually a page on Gamble Aware, I think, where it will tell you how much each company has paid in a year. That could be £5. It could be generally, it's like average £250 towards its research, education and treatment. I think there's the big four that will pay a few million in, and that will make a difference. And then there are lots of different avenues that the gambling companies can decide to pay particular places to do particular projects or support, but it's not a fair system. And what happens is that nobody can predict how much income is going to be made that year to forward think on treatment and prevention. So one of the proposals in the gambling white paper is to have a statutory levy. And we'll just have to wait and see. So fingers crossed in some ways, but there's still a long way to go in the kind of understanding and the industry as well.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to us today and they're thinking, hang on, this all seems like it could be me, this, and things seems to be getting out of control, or I'm buying too many scratch cards, or what I thought was, well, I'm sitting in the car waiting for somebody at the train station, I'll have a quick go on the gamble and see if I can win. What would you say to them? What would you recommend that they do?
I would definitely say, just have a think about what you're doing. Maybe if it's something that you're doing online, delete that app for a bit, see how you feel about it, see if it's making a difference to your daily life. Because, we can sit at the train station, can't we, and go, oh, I'm bored. And boredom is, really dangerous for people, sat at home. There are ladies that will sit in the bath and the kids are being looked after by the parent and the other partner, and they'll go, this is me time. And they will just be, they'll have a bit of a flutter and they'll do this. There's also stuff which is meant to be addressed on, Facebook, where there's raffles on Facebook that are actually quite dangerous, and really, I don't know, really, well, they're illegal for one to be on there, but also quite dangerous for people to get involved with because, and they work on refer a friend kind of thing in communities. So that's, a bother as well. But if somebody sat there thinking, hang on a minute, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my rent this week, I think that's a bit of a problem. That if you think about what you can function in life, and I know that we're facing really strange times and really stressful times financially and economically, but if you're thinking, maybe I could get some money doing this, if you're not telling anyone that you're gambling, and you're keeping it a secret, or even, there's people that I speak to where they're known as the gambler and that, that's how they identify with themselves. But just have a think about, is this fun? Is this fun?
Is it adding to my stress?
Yeah, is it becoming something that helps you forget things or just, disappear from life? Or just something that you feel that you're reliant on or that you spend too much time on. If it's starting to eat away into your life or distracting you, or you're thinking about it when you're not doing it, you may probably have a problem with it. But it's okay, because there was a life before gambling and there can be a life after gambling as well. And there's lots of support out there. There's lots of people with lived experience that are happy to talk to you if that's what you want.
I think that's the key, isn't it? When you think there's a problem, you're not on your own, and for people to realise that whether you're an affected other or whether it's you that's got the problem, there's always somebody at the end of the phone that can help and someone that you can talk to.
Yeah, there will always be somebody that will be happy to listen, and I think that's the main thing, even if you're not sure, because we can convince ourselves that we don't need that support or that we've got a grip on it. But I always kind of say, just one person, even if that person's a stranger, it's just to get it out there and say it out loud can really help and really kind of put it in perspective. And, you know, and there's lots of support out there and you can get through it, as bad as it may be. And for the things that you may have done, you know, you can get through it. And
there's also something else which I found quite interesting as well on your site, that, you know, we've just said about you could delete the app, so it's removing that temptation, but trying to replace it with something else.
Definitely.
So from your experience, when people have tried to stop gambling, what sorts of things have they turned to? Have they gone for walks or have a dance or
all of them things, Nicki? So, yeah, definitely. And it's that thing of, if you think of you've done something over and over and over again, in your brain you've created neural pathways that it picks up. So generally when people are coming into recovery, those urges and, you know, wanting to carry on gambling is because you're looking with your brain in your eyes and going, but I'd normally be doing this, and your brain's going, why are you not doing these same things? So for those to fade, you need to create new ones. So it's about doing things that you enjoy, maybe new hobbies, writing a journal and just having a think about what you do, making plans and moving forwards. But people go for runs, people start back up at the gym, have a think about all the things that you may have forgotten about. So lots of hobbies that you've neglected because you were gambling. People end up quite isolated. So try and make an effort with friends and getting out and about and just being cared for and loved. Or gardening's a massive one, you know, just getting out and about, maybe doing a bit of volunteering, but just take it easy on yourself. But people generally in recovery are very eager to get involved in stuff and start a new life. And debt can also be another thing that, you know, go and get that sorted out as well. Get some help if you've got debts, because what you want to do is get it into a manageable kind of thing where it's not dragging you down all of the time, so that you can pay it as well as you can do without it really impacting on your life.
So who's the best people if somebody has got a situation now where they're realizing this is all too much and the debt's built up? Who can they ring? Who can they speak to?
So they could ring somebody like Step Change, which is a national charity. They're very, very well versed on gambling addiction now. They've sought out consultations with people. There'll also be the CAB. They've just recently ended a gambling project, but a lot of their staff will be, you know, they're not going to judge you for whatever reason that you've got into this situation. You won't be judged. It's about helping you move on from that. I think there's also Pay Plan as well that are working with GamCare. So there's lots of different agencies. You could just try, I know that there are some small community programs that do debt management, that, you know, they will have heard stories before that are similar, or even, you know, more, I don't know, more dramatic. But it's just about you getting that support and getting sorted out so that you can make steps to move forwards.
Definitely. And I think all these different sites that we've spoken about and different options and blockers, I think we'll put into the comment section. So for people watching this, if you've missed any of the links, they'll be able to see them at the bottom and then hopefully move forward.
Definitely.
I think people just need to realise that this might be a problem, but it doesn't have to be for the rest of your life, is there? There's always somebody there that can support you, whether it's you, the addiction, or you're affected, or there's people at the end of the phone that can support you and help you through this. This life after gambling.
It can do, Nicki, and it's about that thing of, it may feel like it is just so overwhelming and what are people going to say, and it's just about, if you want your life to be different, grab hold of support that's out there. You know, people take their lives over gambling, and that's how serious it can be, that people feel that they have no choice. And it's about learning that you do have choice and that you can step away, and eventually it fades. And it is about just reaching out for that support. That's the main thing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, Nadine.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it, and I hope this helps other people.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That was really fascinating. I myself could have listened to it all afternoon, because I was frantically taking notes as we were talking. I mean, I'm not going to go through what you've just said there, but you really covered most of the issues regarding gambling and the ease with which people get into the habit, because it is a habit, and you describe the various facets of the habit and the effect that there is a reward there that people are looking for various reasons, and also the fact that it's not just economical in its manifestation, but there are also health issues and so on. And you also talked about how this was aggravated by COVID. You then talked about the legislation and how important that is in beginning to sort of look at the prevention and how to handle this issue. People should not be afraid to come forward, and as Nicki said, we will put the links in the comments and so on, and to use sites such as GamStop and other sites to help them with the addiction. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Help is at hand, and something can be done about it. When we begin to measure a behavior, already we're making the changes, whether we are, as we said, whether we are looking for others to help us, or whether we are replacing that behavior with a healthy one. So once again, thank you very much, Nadine, for being with us today. And I hope that our session today will be of benefit to our members, to our viewers, and to the public at large. Thank you.